There you go.
Good job, Larry.
Hey,
Well, are we set to go, Larry?
you are.
Okay, that's great. So I'll just fix my screen here. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Ask Me Anything with Jessica. We're really glad you've come this evening, and we're particularly happy because it's been a gorgeous day and we pulled you in from the outdoors possibly. And we're really happy because in some ways this is almost like a celebration at this point in the campaign. We've got so little time left before the big E-Day on Monday. So my name is Carol McQuaig, and along with my husband, Mark De Bruin, we have been privileged to be the co-campaign managers of Jessica Wegg during this intense and wild ride of a 2025 federal campaign. So what we'd like to do this evening, before we get started with the Q&A and giving you an opportunity to meet Jessica in more depth, is we'll start with a land acknowledgement, and Mark is going to offer that. Go ahead when you're ready, Mark. Thanks.
Okay. Well, as Carol said, it's a pleasure to be here. So I think most of us know that we live in a riding, a very large riding that has a lot of First Nations in it, at least 22, all of whom have been here for thousands of years. And we acknowledge that we are on the traditional and unceded lands of these many First Peoples, lands that have been under their sole stewardship for thousands of years before our time. As custodians, they cared for these lands, ensuring they remained healthy and abundant in their many gifts for millennia. And we gratefully acknowledge the traditional wisdom, care, and love that ensured the land of abundance, freedom, and peace that we know today. The rest of us arrived here on Vancouver Island very recently, no more than 300 years ago or so. We have come to realize that we have much healing to do in our relations with our First Nations brothers and sisters as we atone for the lack of appreciation and the ignorance of our ancestors. This is serious work that we all gladly enter into. Today, we gratefully acknowledge these things and give thanks for the privilege of living and enjoying the beauty and the bounty of these ancient lands. We honor our First Nations brothers and sisters and their ancestors, and we hope that the healing work we do blesses this land and all its inhabitants. Gila Kasla.
Gila Kasla. Thank you, Mark. That was absolutely beautiful. And it is the appropriate way to begin anything that we do together is in deep gratitude for what's come before. So before we get into the Q&As, I need to start with a few housekeeping pieces. And one of those is that you may have noticed that we are recording this session. There are people who would like to have been part of our time together who aren't able to be here, and this will enable them to participate in it in their own time and at their own leisure. So we will be recording. The best view we feel for you to be participating in the call tonight is the speaker view. And you're probably all pretty tech savvy, but if you don't know where to find that, if you take your cursor up to the right-hand corner of your Zoom screen and you click on view, that will open up. And I think the first one on the list is speaker. So you can click on speaker and that will set you up for a great evening. So I want to also say for anyone who is not comfortable being on camera, feel free to click off your video, even though we would love to see your faces. It's really much more fun that way when we're actually together in this viewing. Also attendees, so all of us or all of you will be muted, particularly during the initial part of our time together when we are going through the questions that have been pre-submitted. So that, excuse me, there are a number of questions that have been submitted to us, and we will go through those first. And once we've done that, we'll open it up to your participation. And while Jessica is answering some of those questions that have been pre-submitted, if something comes up in you, like a good question or some inspiration comes up out of what she's saying, you can feel free, even during that time, to go down to the chat. And that's at the bottom of your screen. If you open up the bottom part of your screen by placing your cursor on it, I think it's the fourth icon from the left. At least it is on my screen. And if you open that up, you can enter your question right into the chat box. So I think that's covered it. And what we would love to do, because I think it's a fairly manageable number of people on the call this evening, what we'd like to do later in the call is simply open it up, and so we can have a conversation amongst ourselves. But to start, I would like to introduce Jessica. And because Mark and I have been her campaign managers over these past, what has it been, 37 days, Jessica?
Almost.
Amazing. And
37 days Monday.
Yeah, that's right, 37 days Monday. And you can probably appreciate that when you're in an intense relationship like a candidate and her campaign managers, you get to know one another. And I have to say it's been an absolute pleasure. I want to introduce Jessica, first of all, from my point of view, which I would refer to as the essence of Jessica. And that's right from the heart. And then I will hand the mic, so to speak, over to Jessica so that she can introduce herself, probably a little bit more from the practical side of things and from the point of view of her life experience, as well as her experience during this campaign. So I look forward to that. And so from my experience of Jessica, I just want to say that this is a remarkable woman. Jessica, if she is anything, she's courageous, because I've seen Jessica pivot and make changes on a dime so many times in this election. And one of the things that endears her to me is that when she's making these pivots, she will come up with a great idea. She'll say, oh yeah, we can do that. And she has a killer sense of humor. So those qualities are really valuable qualities in a campaign that's been crazy and intense as this one has been. I also want to say that she has an incredibly impressive skill set. And beyond that, and she'll talk a little bit more about that when she introduces herself. So she does have this great skill set. She is a multi-talented woman. She loves art, drama, singing. And in fact, some of you here in Comox may have had the opportunity to attend her opera, smack in the middle of the most intense campaign. So I have to hand it to you. She has, as you can tell, she has a huge capacity. And I think we've seen nothing yet in some ways. But for me, the most lovable part of Jessica is that rather than all of these skills and talents being driven by her life goals and her wanting to be out front, they are driven by her heart. And her heart is a heart that wants the best for everyone. She truly is a person who will leave no one behind. And she wants the best, not just for all of us, but she wants the best for the planet as well. And if that's not the kind of person we want in Parliament, I think we're a little trapped. Anyway, Jessica, please introduce yourself and take your time. Thank you.
So just for those of you on this call, that's the first, we hadn't practiced that part and I'm a little choked up. So thanks, Carol. That was really
You're
nice.
so welcome.
Um, so hi everyone, good evening. Thank you for being here with us tonight. I'll give the general spiel. So if you've heard it, you can tune out for a few seconds or feel free to stay zoned in. I won't know either way. But my name is Jessica Wegg, and I'm the Green Party candidate in this riding. And it's my second time doing this. I also ran in the 2021 election with the Green Party, and that was all on Zoom. So all candidates was on Zoom. There was not any door-to-door knocking that we did. It was all on Zoom. So this is a poignant way to close this campaign for us, the way it started kind of in 2021. I live in Comox with my husband and our two children and our two huskies. I'm a lawyer. I got my undergrad degrees from the University of Indianapolis in German and psychology. I got my master's degree in clinical psychology, and then I went to law school at Indiana University and practiced there in Indiana for quite a long time. My husband's law firm that I work with, we are now on both sides of the border, and I'm also licensed to practice in Ontario and British Columbia. Um, in the American half of our law firm that I do research and writing for, safely from my desk north of the border, is constitutional law. So we sue various government agencies using the Constitution for government overreach and government abuses, police brutality, that kind of thing. And we also represent victims of institutional abuse. So athletes who've been abused by their coaches, men who've been abused by their priests, that kind of thing, where an institution is covering up the crime. So that's what our US work is. I think it's pretty important to have a US constitutional lawyer as your MP right now because we have a constitutional crisis that's affecting us all. So it's kind of a very unique skill set that I am probably one of the only candidates in Canada running has. So it's a helpful one to have. In BC, I am doing criminal defense with BC Legal Aid, and I'm enjoying that a lot. So it's a new area of the law for me, and it's fun to learn something new, and I'm really enjoying it. I also helped Ben Isett on Rainbow Eyes appeal after her sentencing for protesting in Fairy Creek. And I will be helping if that goes up to the Supreme Court too. So just another area of the law that I do. What else to say about myself? I'm a terrible gardener. Carol comes over, I think, and falls over when she sees my house. But it's really gone to anyway, seed now in after this spring and everything. So my kids are 8 and 12. I'm the chair of the PAC, the PTA at my son's elementary school. Drive my kids, hockey season's over, but a lot of 2/3 of the year is driving them early morning to hockey practice. My daughter skied as well this season. I try to challenge myself in every area of my life and make sure that I'm always learning something new and pushing myself farther. So a couple things that I have done, I've always sung, and as Carol mentioned, I started singing very young and was in choirs in Calgary, where I was born and lived until I was 12. My mom had tried me in ballet with my sister, and it was very clear that was not my journey. So she she moved me to singing and it worked out well. But I got to my 40s and I thought, I want to see what I can still do with my body. It still works. I can learn new things. I can try to reprogram parts of my brain. So I started taking dance lessons, and it's really hard and it's really frustrating for me at times because I'm in with dancers who've been dancing their whole lives and they can learn something in 1 second, and it takes me actively thinking about it and trying and really working hard to get it. And so it's a really fun challenge for me to do that. And also, I'm really proud. One more thing I'll say about myself, I'm really proud of, is that every year since I've lived here, it has been my New Year's resolution to go in the ocean once a week. And every year I get to about the second week of February before I decide not to do it. But I have done it every single week this year. And so I'm through the winter months of this part and I'm enjoying that as well. So I just go in and swim back and that's it. So anyway, that you actually got the long version. If you've been to all candidates, you haven't learned two of those facts you didn't know about me. So now you do.
That's beautiful, Jessica. And actually, that is far from the whole version. There are so many other pieces to Jessica's life, and I'm sure we'll touch on them as we go through the evening. So to get us started off with your questions, and these, I've got several questions that have been submitted, and thank you for the people who took some time to submit a question or two early. So we'll start with these, and then hopefully some of you will have placed your questions into the chat. And we've got a couple of support people, Mark and Susan, who will watch the chat, and they'll collate anything that is of a similar nature, and we'll get those questions answered as well. So our first question, well, actually, I'm going to start the first question off. Jessica and Mark and I were at a high school here where Jessica was speaking to the students there, and these were grade 11 and 12 students. And I will bet you any money that you can't ask any tougher questions than they did, because they were quite a group and they knew their stuff. And it was a fun process. But one of the students asked, it was a young woman named Stella, and she asked Jessica, what inspired you to run for the Green Party?
So what inspired me to run, I'll break it into two parts. What inspired me to run and what inspired me to run for the Green Party. When I lived in the States, I couldn't be active in politics, and it was a very interesting time to be there with everything that was happening. And I wasn't a citizen, so I couldn't do anything. My husband is American, and he was very, very involved. Our friend ran for Congress. We had fundraisers at our house. My husband was Bernie Sanders' lawyer in Indiana for the 2016 primary. So it was always a politically active house, and I couldn't do anything. So when we moved to Canada, I finally could do something. And like I said, it was during COVID. There was a provincial election happening, and I just kind of didn't really know much about the other parties, but knew that the Green Party would be a better fit for me because it would have been focused on the climate, which I have always been aware that we need to do more for the climate and the climate emergency that we're in. So I just started making phone calls for that election. And one thing led to another, and there was a question, hey, would you ever want to be a candidate? Oh, sure, I'd consider it. I didn't think that they just picked any Joe Schmo off the street, but as it turns out, I said I was interested, and here I am. So that's maybe the nuts and bolts of it. But the reason in my heart that I wanted to run because I can do this, and I know I can do it, and I know I'd be really good at it. And I'm a mom with young kids, and I see where this is going, and I want to do everything I can to stop it. And I want to do the biggest thing I can do to stop it. And this is the biggest thing I can think of to get involved and to make a real difference that could change the course of things for my kids, for your kids, your neighbors, nieces, nephews, every, you know. So that's why I do it. And it's hard sometimes to know that, like, my kids are really neglected. They've been latchkey kids for the past 35 days, basically. And sometimes I've just left them notes and ordered them pizza from afar while I've been elsewhere. And I'm doing this for them, and they get it. But it's funny that that's how this works out. But that's what I'm doing it for. I'm doing it because I can, and I would be so good at it. And I'm sick of people wasting my kids' time with policies and laws that are only benefiting corporations, and we don't have that time. So we need to get some angry moms in there who can make people behave and do things that matter and do things and make important changes.
Bravo. Thank you. And I want to let you all know that after Jessica answered this question at the high school, Stella signed up as a volunteer. Way to go.
Yes.
So on to our submitted questions. And the first question was submitted by Jan. And she says, she's got a couple of questions here, but I'll sift through hers and intertwine them with a few other questions as well. So her first question is, I would like to know what Jessica thinks about the way we elect people to represent us after this experience she's had. And then she puts in brackets, she says, I've seen how parties betray their commitment to be grassroots or to foster participatory democracy, how the focus seems to be on selling candidates and platforms, not on reaching good policy and building good relationships. So I'd like to know what Jessica thinks about the way we elect people to represent us. Thank you, Jan.
I'm just reading Jan's quick comment here.
Uh-huh.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah, that's a very big and detailed question. And this has been, and so Jen, let us know if I'm not answering the part of it, I'm not answering it the right way for you. Or I'm not answering the question you mean to ask. It's been interesting this time around because I feel like I haven't had that experience where we're selling candidates. I feel like I am a really good candidate for this, and I've had, and I know I can work well for people. And on the other hand, I have heard a lot of other candidates. I think particularly the Liberals are riding on the coattails of Mark Carney, and there's one riding in the country where they're voting for Mark Carney, and the rest of them, they're supposed to be voting for the person who they want to represent them, who they feel would best represent that riding in Ottawa. So I think that there needs to be more education about how our system works, that we don't elect the Prime Minister. We elect a person who we feel represents our riding the best. And it's unfortunate with the first past the post system that we don't really feel like we get to do that. And we have to, some people feel they have to think strategically or vote strategically to get the outcome they want. And they don't get to vote for the person that they want to vote for. So I think that is frustrating. I'm pulling up your question on my phone here too, so I can make sure I'm addressing all the parts of it. Did that answer that part of your question, Jan?
There she is. Jan's got her hand up. Larry, can you unmute Jan? I think we'll let.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, that's great. I'll just share one idea that I've come across before when I read it in a book. Then I thought, oh, wow, it's going beyond just me and a couple friends. So, um, journalist Amanda Ripley wrote a book called High Conflict, and it's about polarization and so on,
Hmm.
and dealing with that. And in there, she describes how the Baha'i faith um, governs itself.
Hmm.
And so it's very different from what we're used to. There aren't campaigns, people just suggest names. And you're always voting for people you actually know. And when you're elected, it's not like, wow, congratulations. It's more like, we've entrusted you with this job. And I know Green candidates, Adam Olson in particular, would say we don't have the balance of power, we have the balance of responsibility or something. So there was
Yep.
already that idea that it's more of a responsibility than a power trip. But the way our elections are right now, I really think it's a problem because often people are voting more for an image than for something real that they know.
Mm,
That's all I want to say. Yeah.
mm.
Hmm. Yeah, I looked up when I read your question originally, I looked up that book. It looks really good. I might have to pick it up from the library. Yeah, it's been a really polarizing and polarized election, more so than usual. Greens always get the vote splitting argument. Um, this time has been really bad with it. It was much worse this time than last time. Um, and we have been able to talk to people, but a lot of people are just afraid, and they're really afraid of what's happening around them, and they feel like that this is their way of controlling what they can, which is a natural response to things. Uh, but it has really been frustrating in that way. And I agree that it's not what Cynthia's written.
I'll catch it.
Oh, okay. Um, okay. So I agree that it's not an ideal situation, and we just need a better electoral system, which I think we'll talk about in the
Mhm,
next few questions.
mhm. Yes, thank you. Thanks, Jessica. And Jan, thanks for the question. You speak for many, many people, I know. So let's just go down into the next one. And Karen Henderson has asked, she said, please, Jessica, tell me why it is important to vote Green in the likelihood Green will not take the seat, and a vote for the NDP candidate is more likely to keep the Conservative candidate out. Now, that could be a long answer, and it's a really important answer.
Yeah.
So take it away,
I'll start with why
Jessica.
I'll start with why it's important to vote
Yes,
Green.
yeah.
So, it is very unlikely that I will win in this election. I am not completely delusional about that. But we need to keep running, and we need to keep being a choice for people. There are people who will only vote Green. And and if I didn't run, they wouldn't vote at all. They wouldn't vote NDP, and they wouldn't vote Liberal. And they deserve to have a choice. They deserve to have a vote and a say in things. Secondly, in a practical way, you need at least 2% of the national vote to maintain recognized party status, where you get some resources in Ottawa, you get some time during question period, you can be on committees. If you don't have recognized party status, then you don't get those things, and it's really hard to do the work that you need to do. So by running candidates, even in ridings where it's not likely that they'll get elected, you're adding to that vote, and every vote really does count for that reason. So it's definitely not a wasted vote, because it goes towards this national average that we need. it would be tragic if the Green Party became a non-entity or irrelevant, and we would slip further towards a two-party system, which we know is disastrous. We need to fight tooth and nail to keep vibrant parties, active parties, as much as we can in our electoral system until we can get proportional representation. Who knows when that may be, but we need to keep parties alive and active. And also, we need to keep parties who will consistently prioritize the climate and think about it at every turn. We need to keep small parties who can bring big creative ideas to the to be heard. And sometimes those ideas are picked up and you just plagiarized and used by the other parties, and that's great because we're at least doing our work, getting our ideas passed and through some way. But we need to have these voices because by having small parties, they are the ones more likely to bring outrageous and important ideas to be heard that are necessary. Otherwise, you just get middle of the road the whole way, and we're not going to progress at all. So that's another great reason to vote Green. With regard to the part of the question that asked when a vote for the NDP is more likely to keep Aaron Gunn out, I mean, your guess looking at the polls that there are is as good as anyone's. It's as long as both the NDP and the Liberal are running, which they are, Aaron Gunn is likely to win. They are the ones that have the biggest chunks that would have to be added together to beat his numbers that we know of. Most of the things that are out there aren't real polls. There are a few now, I think. But there's, arguments about what kind of company did the poll. Is it a conservative backed company? Is it an old poll? So it's tricky. A vote for the NDP in this riding, unfortunately, is not likely to change the outcome. The last ones I saw were like the NDP had 25% and the Liberals had 23%. There's one where they're switched. The Liberals are slightly ahead than the NDP, but the Green vote, you could take my projected numbers on those polls, add them to either one of those, and it's not enough. So use this opportunity to know that you can vote with the way that aligns with your values, and you can vote how you want to vote and vote for the person you want to represent you, because it's not likely to change the outcome. And strategic voting in this riding, the way that the split is not likely to change the outcome. There's not a close enough margin. Nanaimo is a different story. Nanaimo, Paul Manly is so close to the Conservative. Just a few points could push him over the line, and both the Liberals, I think, have the next most after him. But either way, it wouldn't take much from either one of the Liberals or the NDP to push him. You wouldn't have to get everybody on board to get Paul Manly elected. Here, you would have to go out and get everybody on board. And the other thing to think about too is that if we got everybody who doesn't vote to vote for me, I could win. There's a huge number of people in this riding who don't vote, and that their numbers change the outcome. So, if you really want to do something this weekend, go out and find as many non-voters as you can, and do something. Yeah. I heard one person at the Quadra All Candidates last night said when people talked to him about the strategic voting and what he recommended, he was telling them to wait until 6:00 when all the East Coast polls had closed and we started to get some numbers, and then you could go vote here with that additional information, and maybe you would vote differently if you felt more secure knowing that there wasn't a conservative government which there is unlikely to be a conservative government in place. So it's a long-winded explanation to why it's great to vote green, because you can, because you have the choice and you should embrace that choice. And if that's what you want, if the Green Party values are what you value too, vote green. We're here, that's what we're here for, so that you can leave your polling station on Monday and know that you did what you wanted to, and you did what you felt you voted for the person who you wanted to represent you, and not the person who you were least afraid of.
Jessica, thank you. And you're right. It takes a little bit of explaining, and it's in a way unfortunate because education plays such a huge part in this first past the post system. And what Mark and I have noted over the cycle of the campaign is that when we have the time to stop and talk with people about the idea of vote splitting and the Green Party, when people, you can see in their eyes, they get the aha moment. And we had a person just the other night, she said, oh my God, she said, I so wanted to vote green, but I thought I had to vote strategically, and now I really see that I don't. And away she goes, voting green. So that's great. And education and a change in how we do politics is huge. And so that's the other thing I think for people to be considering between elections is, what can I do to help PR get established in our country? Did you know that we are one of only a very few countries in the world who are not a true democracy? Because democracy, being a democratic country, is having proportional representation in your government. So we've got a ways to go. I have another question here, and the short form is, Jessica, why did you choose to put your picture on the signs? And there's a little more description here. It says you are the only candidate with their picture on the campaign signs in the public eye. How does this reflect how the election is playing out in our riding? I'm not clear on what that means. So if the person who wrote this question would like to put their hand up and bring a little more clarity, that would be welcomed. And if not, Jessica, maybe just start.
Well, I can start responding because those are my last year's. They're the signs from the last election. We didn't order any new signs. Yeah. We had all these ones already done. And in the last election, there were, for sure, Rachel had pictures on her signs. And Shelley, did Shelley? I don't know if Shelley did, but for sure Rachel did. Yeah, for sure Rachel did. And they're just that's the answer. I didn't choose to do it differently. But also we wouldn't have known either way. There's not like a memo that goes out to say, hey, everybody, the new style is no pictures on signs. We use pictures, and I think that it's I would prefer that more candidates had their pictures on the signs, because you can see who they are. And you might not have known who Jessica Wegg was. Like, the people at the grocery store might not know my name, but they might recognize my face. Be like, oh, she's the one who shops here. I know her, so they're more likely to vote for me. So I think it's good to have your pictures on signs. And anyway, it wasn't really, there was no sign decision making this year at all, which was kind of refreshing. It was already done and dusted for us, so we just put them back up.
That's great. That's great. Annie, was there anything you wanted to add or clarify around that?
Well, I guess it really stood out for me, Jessica, when, because I live in Campbell River, for those of you who don't know, and there was a lot of signs defaced over the first weekend after they were put up. And your sign with your face on it, had obscenities scrawled across it. Signs were knocked over. And suddenly it became really personal. to me that, this is somebody who I know and interact with, and she has put herself physically in a place of vulnerability. And it was way more significant to me seeing your signs being defaced and things painted over your image. And the other signs were just names. There weren't the same stakes for them in that instant. And so that I just was really curious about my reaction. And I thought, all these other people, we don't know who they are. We know their names, but until
Mhm.
we have an all candidates meeting, we don't get to meet them. And then, of course, in Campbell River, we did not have an all candidates meeting. And so I just think there's something to pay attention to in this, in the fact that you bring yourself forward, like you say, and you can be known.
Yeah, no, that's true. That is true. Although I think in this election I had 0 penises spray painted on my face. So that was a refreshing change in the vandalism that we
Dear,
have had.
dear.
Um, the it is easier to take it personally when it's right across your face, but it's not like the other signs weren't vandalized. And so and I'll say this, for my whole team did such a great job like shielding me from the worst of things. Like I had one of the signs that had the one that I had an Instagram video up where I said you shouldn't vandalize signs. That one was just in my carport for a long time, and Mark was coming by. He said, "You shouldn't have this here. You shouldn't have to look at this every day," and he took it away. So like I'm so grateful for everybody who's been helping and handling those things for me, because it does wear on you. It can, and it takes a while to build up the uh, the duck feathers, I guess I'll say, to that kind of thing, to let it just go, run off your back. And in a short rip period, you don't have long to build up that resistance to it. So that is something to consider. But I think that it stood out that I ended up being the only one with my picture on it. And I think that people like you, Annie, going past, be like, why would you be so horrible to write on her face? Like, they have another reaction to it, and strangers would be like reaching out and saying, "Hey, I put up your sign again. It got defaced. I tried to wash it off. Sorry." So I don't know if they did that for the signs where it was just their name on it. It's just different, but it's an interesting question.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Annie. Yeah. We're going to go in a different direction entirely with the next question. And this question came from Fred, pre-submitted. He says, I would like to hear your opinion on no-go zones to create the largest possible reserves where wildlife can thrive undisturbed away from us, all of us. And then he says down below, he says, many of us thought ecotourism was the way to go, and it was a great success for businesses. The only problem was that the wildlife suffered greatly, from gooseneck barnacles, mussels, oysters, and clams to whales. It was kayakers and hikers who mostly stripped the beaches. There's a before and after story of ecotourism here. So his question is, I would like to hear your opinion on no-go zones to create the largest possible reserve where the wildlife can thrive undisturbed away from us. And we may, once we get through the pre-submitted questions, we may have an opportunity to open it up. And Fred could describe a bit more about this as a possibility.
I love this question.
Yeah.
I like this idea a lot, and I think that it's definitely something we should look into and explore the feasibility of. It made me think of COVID during the hard lockdowns when there were no more ships in the Georgia Strait, and the whales came back in numbers we hadn't seen before, um, and just how resilient nature is if we leave it alone properly, leave it alone for even a little bit. And I think it makes people nervous to realize how both significant and insignificant we are. Significant in the damage we can do, and insignificant in how there is a whole, we are one species on this planet. And there's a lot going on around us that we assume is subservient to us that is not. So I really like this idea, and I would love to think about it more and explore it further.
Thank you. All right, so we're going back now to Jan's other question. She says, I like to hear what a vote for Jessica does, how it can have an impact. And then she says, also, I would like to discuss how we can best work for fair voting and which systems might work best. Well, I think you've answered part of that question.
I think so. The first part, I think your vote for me. Remember, we need 2% nationally. The Green Party does, and the Green Party is not without its faults, and there are some fair criticisms of it. But it's a viable choice, and I think that we need to work with what we have. So I did answer that part. What we can do for proportional representation. I love this question. So first of all, we can get involved with, I think, the organizations that already exist that are working really hard on trying to get proportional representation in Canada. And at the kind of individual level, what I love to share with people is that when you get a petition, a paper petition to send to your MP, whoever it ends up being, you only need 25 signatures on it for that petition to be presented to Parliament. Your MP doesn't have to agree with it, but they have to present it. If you do an electronic petition, you need 500 signatures, and there are lots more steps involved. But if you get a paper petition, you and 24 friends can sign it and send it to your member of Parliament, and it has to get presented. So just keep at it and get other people, send in as many 25-person petitions as possible. Call your friends across the country and have them do the same thing. I think this election has, more than anything, highlighted the problem with first past the post. And when we're going to likely get the candidate who is the least qualified to do this job and the most polarizing and destructive person because of our first past the post system, I think that it's really waking people up to the problem, and that we need something different to happen.
Mm-hmm. And we can do that. I mean, that is so easy. Create a petition, 25 signatures. We can do that.
It was Cortez Currents. Roy wrote about it in a recent thing on Cortez Currents. We could link it maybe in the chat, where it shows the chart of what you need, or you could just Google it.
Right. Yeah. All right. Now, I think we have covered the pre-submitted questions. And Mark and Susan, do we have any others that we haven't addressed from the chat? There's some nice comments. I think that at this point, Jessica, if you're comfortable with this, that we could simply open it up to a conversation and have people raise their hand. And once you raise your hand, and you can do that by going down to the bottom of your screen and hitting the react button. That's the button with the heart on it. And when you click on that button, there is a drop-down menu. I don't have that function available, but there is a menu in there with a square in it at the bottom. And if you click on raise hand, your hand will go up. And Larry will unmute you at that time.
I have actually allowed everybody to unmute themselves generally. So.
Okay,
You raise your hand first so we can acknowledge who's speaking.
Thank you. And we'll do that in the order. We'll have you speak in the order that your hands have been raised. Thanks, Larry. Okay, Jan.
Well, I was typing up something, but this way I don't have to type it up about no-go zones. You know, I think that would be better than having visitors go and over harvest or wreck beaches and so on. But I just wanted to add to this conversation that I've been deeply influenced by reading Robin Wall Kimmerer's book Braiding Sweetgrass, and then there's a really neat book called Restoring the Kinship Worldview. And both Robin Wall Kimmerer and the authors of the Kinship Worldview book talk about how humans are meant to be actually part of caring for nature. And that's what we need to learn. And our society is so far from that model that it seems impossible to many of us. But when you know that humans lived for millennia like that, and it gives you hope that maybe we could learn one day. Restoring the Kinship Worldview, I got the Powell River Library to get it. It's really a wonderful book. I'll put a link for it in the chat.
Nice.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you. All right. And Neil Fraser, tell us where you're calling in from, Neil. You're still muted. You've just muted yourself, I think.
Oh, okay.
You were unmuted to start.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'd like to say just very briefly, Jessica, I'm so delighted with your candidacy, and I think it's a tremendous advantage that you're a constitutional scholar. I've already had the pleasure of voting for you because I had a ballot come to me in the mail about 2 weeks ago.
Thank you.
Bravo.
But my question is, look, you've made a huge investment for this campaign and you've learned a lot. And my question is, are you going to run again next time? And the second part of that question is, what are you going to do in the meantime to increase your chances? Because so much, I think you just have such a huge potential to help the country. That's all.
Thank you.
2 questions.
So no, just a couple tiny questions. I think I would run again. I enjoy it, and I think it's important work, and I think that I'm only going to continue to get better at it and more qualified. And so that's the short answer to your first question. The second question about what we can do in the interim, I think what we have to do is find a way to bridge the gap that's between us and the communities who feel excluded, or they feel that they align, that they can't talk. I think a major problem that we have is reaching people. This is writing is massive. So just the geographical limitations of reaching people, and the time and investment that it takes to reach people in between elections, and then connecting, because I think we have made a mistake previously in trying to, this isn't the right word, but it's the best word I can think of for now, preach the right solution and what needs to happen. What needs to happen first is we have to listen to people and meet them where they are and be willing to learn from them and have uncomfortable conversations where they want to just yell at us that we want to take their logging jobs away or their fishing jobs away, and learn how to deal with that fear and the discomfort that it causes in ourselves, so that we can have conversations about people and reach them. And then we can really continue to do the work of community building, which is how we do better next time. And so we can do the community building and that learning at the same time. I'm super excited by my official agent, who actually lives in West Van, and she has some amazing ideas about what we can do to continue to build between between the RIP periods, essentially, before the next election, to continue to build and be stronger. There has to be a better way than what we're doing. There has to be a solution to reach the people who don't vote. There has to be a way that we can connect with people who do not think they will ever vote Green. If we can have the part of the conversation where we can get to the point where we say Greens aren't whipped, we're not going to just sign off on something because Elizabeth May tells us to without thinking about the North Island. We will just vote how we will listen to you. We will be present, listen to you, and try to figure out what's the best decision for this riding. And it's not going to be what's the best decision for Toronto or Vancouver necessarily. So it's a lot of work and it's a lot of commitment, and we can't do it without more people. We can't, with the 6 of us on the executive, do all this work by ourselves. It's impossible. So we need to, I think priorities would be recruiting more people. Everybody who reached out to me this election and said, I really wish I could vote for you, but, or after I think every all candidates, people reached out to me and said, you are the best person for this job. I really wish I could vote for you. But I want to reach out to all of them and say, now's your chance. If you think that I'm the best person for this job, then put your money where your mouth is and support me right now and help me the next time, because we can't do it by ourselves. I have been the candidate for this riding, for this election, the longest out of, like, basically as soon as the last election ended. It wasn't long before I was the official candidate for this riding for the next election. I was the first for the Green Party in Canada. And from most people, it was crickets, and we would send out GVO emails to try to get people involved. And everyone, understandably, has a lot going on that, it's not been in between elections. Politics isn't a priority for a lot of people. I think that will change now. And I think we have a better argument to say, we can't all fall asleep between elections and hope to do all the work that has to be done in 37 days or 53 or whatever the maximum is. It's not possible. So we need to figure out how to recruit more people. We need to figure out how to communicate with those who traditionally vote Conservative and let them know that we are a viable option for a lot of reasons, and that we want to support their jobs. We want to learn how we can make them sustainable and make them feel comfortable as we transition to the most sustainable options. And we need to build community. I think those are the 3 main ways that we can go about changing the outcome of the next election.
Right on. Absolutely, Jessica. And thank you for that question, Neil.
Thank you,
And
Jessica. Thank you.
I love the answer being that creating community is the way that we're going to make change happen. And I just want to say that being part of the Green Party during the between election cycles is a great way to create community, because we have such a super community. And it's one of the reasons we all stay with it, because we love each other. So thank you. All right, John Nielsen, please ask your question.
Hello, Jessica. Thank you very much for your passion and your involvement with this cause. It is very much appreciated. My question had to do with the relative priority of environment amongst the voters across Canada. We're seeing that in polls that surprisingly and disappointingly for me, that the environment is not featuring as highly in the priorities that people might have as it once did. Now, the Green Party, of course, has positions on not just environmental matters, it's other things as well. Do you consider this to be a problem for the Green Party in terms of its perception from the public that it's a bit of a one-party type thing. I mean, that's part of my question. And how much should we be concerned about the failure of the message getting out to Canadians, that in spite of things like Jasper and all the horrible things which have happened, they still seem to value other things more highly than the climate crisis. So thanks again, and I look forward to hearing your response.
Thank you, John. Really good question. Yes, I've seen the same polls where the concern about climate has been dropping, which is terrifying because I think a lot of the concern comes and goes with what climate disasters we're seeing, the climate disaster du jour, so to speak. And we haven't really had any major ones. During my last election, we had just had the heat dome, and we all know what happened, how horrible that was. And I went up to the North Island and I tried to connect with people, and I said, the heat dome has been really bad and we're going to have these climate events. And they said, oh, it was just a little bit warmer up here. It wasn't really that bad. Then the ocean caught fire. Also, during the RIP period, the ocean caught fire and didn't get much traction there. It is hard to get people who aren't already aware of how dire the situation is. I think maybe part of it is a defense mechanism. Like part of their brain quickly identifies it as the existential crisis it is and says, I can't handle that right now. There's too much going on. That's what happened in this, just the backdrop of the climate emergency that we're in, I think, is what has fallen to the wayside in this election, because we have a lunatic in the White House who is saying wild things about Canadian sovereignty. And so that was top of mind, and keeping the Conservatives out because we don't want that to happen here. These things really took priority in our minds. I'm terrified / not worried that there won't be another climate emergency that will happen, in the near future, to remind people that it's a problem. But where it's really going to start hurting is their pocketbooks. And we know that, insurance companies will no longer sell certain kinds of insurance because of the climate emergency. And when we have these mega corporations who are paying attention, telling us this isn't sustainable, not even at 3 degrees past pre-industrial levels, the governments can't bail you out anymore. It's all lost. We are on track for that. And I think that as unnatural for Greens as it feels to make it about money, that's where people feel it the most. That's what everybody can understand. This is going to cost me more money. They might not wrap their heads around flooding in Europe or fires in Europe or the global south, but they can wrap their heads around, my house insurance just went way up and they're not even covering me for X anymore. So I think we're going to have to start having that kind of conversation. I don't know that so much. I think some people still consider the Greens a one issue party. But we do have a full platform. It's easy to talk to them. They ask about housing, we have that in our platform. They ask about healthcare, we have that in our platform. So I feel like it's less that now. But then, of course, there are also people who see the Green Party as, oh, they're going to take my job away. So you never know who you're going to meet. I think it's going to, we'll get to a point where people will realize that they need to start thinking they can't ignore the climate any longer. I hope that we can, that they know that we've been the ones shouting from the rooftops. We have to deal with this issue, and we have the policies to do it. We just need the chance to get them done.
Thank you, Jessica. That's wonderful. And we've got Cynthia. Cynthia, you can unmute yourself and away you go.
Hi, sorry about
There you
that.
go.
I want to say how incredibly articulate you are, Jessica, and how jealous I am that you have this opportunity to make such a wonderful contribution to Canada. My thoughts sometimes move outside of the realm of the Green Party in the sense that Mr. Carney's wife is supposedly a climate activist, and he seems to give a message that the climate is an important issue. And although we're really super preoccupied with American politics and so on right now, my hope is that he and his wife will have a lot to say about the climate and move towards sustainable economic development. As opposed, although he does use the comment economic development, a lot. And so I don't know if I've really totally articulated a question. Mostly I have thoughts, but I'll feel so much more comfortable when we do have proportional representation. And hopefully, as I noted in the chat, that the Broadband Institute won't be involved in designating the question, because last time I'm sure it was defeated because it was such an obtuse proposal. So anyway, yeah, I'm really very curious about your opinion and observations during your meetings with the other candidates and possibly the elitism of the Conservative Party. Sorry, I'm all over the map.
Thanks for that.
Yeah. So I also hope that Mark Carney will do something for the climate. I guess we'll have to wait and see. I don't hold out a lot of hope for that to happen. I think he's been involved in some pretty environmentally destructive projects before.
Right.
And if he should know better because his wife happens to be a climate scientist, I'm not sure he'll change his ways when he's prime minister. Certainly not if it's going to result in a lot of money for a lot of friends. So I guess we'll just wait and see.
Right.
The Conservatives and their elitism, I have nothing to say. They haven't been at any all candidates, so I couldn't tell you what the elitism of the Conservatives from the interactions I've had have been. The Conservatives in this riding, as everyone I'm sure knows, don't show up to all candidates. There was, I think, national instructions nationally to not show up to any all candidates and rather just have private parties and surround yourself with sycophants. So that's their new style of governing.
Right. Very strange. Thank you.
Thanks, Cynthia. Thank you. I've got one other question that came out of the chat, and then Annie will go to you. And this question says, I would like to hear Jessica's comments on Palestine, Israel, and the Middle East.
Yeah, this is a big issue, I think, for a lot of people. And I think that we need to recognize that Palestine is a country that Israel is committing genocide in. And Canada is still playing a role in that. Even, I think, during the election period, we sent chemicals, I think, that were used to fire rockets to Israel. We sent the chemicals to Israel to fire rockets into Gaza. So it's heartbreaking what's happening, and it's so frustrating that we aren't having taking a more courageous stance against it. For my part, I'm doing what I can. One thing that I love about the Green Party is that it's a global movement. It's not just the Green Party of Canada. I am working with Greens around the world who care deeply about this issue and are trying to do what we can. I'm on a group it's organized out of the South Asian Pacific Greens. So the Australian Greens have been very successful in finding and pressuring their governments to cancel contracts that are arming Israel. They've successfully canceled 6 already, I think. And this group that I'm in, we meet once a month and we're learning how to find these contracts in our own countries. So we're looking at how to find them in Canada, and also working with some American lawyers to figure out how to find them in the States and where we can exert pressure on our governments to get those contracts canceled. I'm not hopeful they're going to do that in the States, but we have to realize that just because if Canada takes a position, we're not going to send any more weapons to Israel right now because they're committing war crimes, then our companies might be like, oh, we'll just send them to the States or India, who we know will not stop arming Netanyahu and his army. So we need to find all those contracts too. And so I'm working with the leader of the Green Party of Lebanon, and I are kind of like the ones who, I'm the secretary for the group, and he chairs the meetings that we have, and we're doing this work and trying to train and learn how to get these contracts canceled, how to find them and how to exert pressure to get them canceled. And we want to expand that work to not only the what's happening in the Middle East, but around the world, and find a way to get the arms trade treaty ratified by as many countries as possible and enforced. So I cannot stand by and watch this genocide unfold. I know it's not the only genocide happening in the world. If you're interested, you can go to genocidewatch.org, I think, and you can see where other genocides are happening. But this is the one that we're all having to watch unfold on our Facebook pages and Instagram pages. And it's horrific, and we need to all be doing as much as possible. And that's one other thing I love about the Greens. I wouldn't have that opportunity if I wasn't part of a Green Party.
Thank you for that. I was hoping the Global Greens would come into this conversation. It's so important, and particularly important in a time where our world is shrinking and shrinking, and to have allies, especially allies who are working with the same values as we are, around the world and collaborating around the world in these important ways is pretty remarkable. So thanks for sharing that. All right, our time is getting down there. So just one last question from Annie, and then we'll go in. Jessica, if you have any last thoughts you would like to share or request or put out there, the floor will be yours. So Annie, please go ahead with your question.
Thank you. I think, Jessica, that my question actually dovetails really well into the question about Gaza. And I'm very curious about your position in the shadow cabinet for international trade. And, you know, I'm beginning to see how valuable that is. But I just would love you to talk a bit about maybe what you've learned through being in the shadow cabinet in that position of critic, and also what questions you have or what you see you need to be paying attention to going forward.
Thanks, Annie, for the question. Yeah, so this used to be Paul Manley's portfolio before he stepped away from the Green Party, and so it was vacant when I took it over. It's didn't really mean much when I took it over. Now all of a sudden, international trade is becoming quite an important issue. So what I'm learning is, first of all, Shadow Cabinet has been great. We've gotten to meet in person in Ottawa at the end of January, and hear people's ideas, and we bounce all these ideas off each other, and things that we want to make priorities and take to the membership, and it's been really fantastic in that way. I've learned a lot about international trade, about the CUSMA and NAFTA, and how much power we give corporations who can sue countries if our environmental regulations or other regulations, but they're always environmental, interfere with their ability to make money. So we can save a lot of money on lawsuits when we renegotiate better trade deals with trading partners to make sure that they don't have the ability to sue the countries just because we are interfering with their ability to increase their revenues. So that's been the biggest thing that I've learned so far, and I'm always learning something. Every time I hear Paul talk, I'm like, oh shoot, I should really know that. So it's a steep learning curve, and I'm really enjoying it.
Wonderful. Thank you. And let's see, now we are at 8:20, and I think we have covered all of the questions. Jessica, would you like to share anything in specific or request anything in these last moments? And then we'll sign off. But before we do that, we've got information in the chat if people want to connect with us and follow up and join us between elections or get directions to the, yes, please, or get directions to the closest polling station or need a ride to the polling station. We're here for you. So Jessica, it's all yours.
Thanks. I'm gonna talk about something I haven't talked about yet at any point in this campaign period, and what really got me thinking about it was some of the materials that Jan had put with her question. So she'd referenced that book, and she'd referenced the Baha'i faith, and I sort of alluded to this last night in my closing on Quadra, that what I had said was, it seems like a foregone conclusion, the result of this riding's election. I don't think, if you think NDP is going to do it and you vote NDP, if you think Liberals are going to do it and you vote Liberal, I think that the Conservative is going to get the seat, which is massively frustrating and disappointing, especially when there has been zero effort to connect with most people in this riding. But it's not the end of the world, and we can't let it be the end of the world. There will be an April 29th, there will be an April 30th, and we have to move forward and plan ahead and act and stay vigilant in this time. We cannot get the change that we want, the real revolutionary change that we need, when we're comfortable, when we feel like everything's fine. When we're uncomfortable is when we are motivated to act. And so we can use this time to stay motivated and to act and to affect real change that we all need and want. And we can breathe a bit lighter as I say this, because it's quite certain that the Conservatives will not form government. So a Conservative MP here, I don't even know if they'll be the official opposition, and will have very, very little power to do anything. So that, for whatever Mark Carney and the Liberals may do, they are not Polyev and the Conservatives.
That's true.
So that's a breath of, we can rest knowing that, but we can't rest and do nothing. We have to stay active, and we have to recognize that the only way through this is by building community and by reaching out to our neighbors, and remembering that for most people who voted Conservative, they're not that different from us. They're not Aaron Gunn, and they likely don't believe everything that he believes. Maybe they're traditional, like old-fashioned conservatives who were fiscally conservative, and they're more socially liberal, but they just aren't ever going to vote for a Liberal or an NDP. Maybe they really like Polyev and they want to support him, and they actually don't want to support Aaron Gunn. But we can't make them others, because that's when they win. When we let ourselves be separated into camps, and we start building walls around us, and we stop reaching out across to people who aren't fully aligned with us, is when they win. And we've seen that too in the just on the quote unquote left side of the spectrum. We've seen people plant Liberal flags and NDP flags, and people saying terrible things to all three of us on this side of the spectrum about why haven't we done better, and don't we know we're going to cause fascism to happen in North Island, Powell River, because we're not all dropping out and joining together, which doesn't make sense because we need as many people as possible. So a couple things I observed during this election. One was outside the Powell River, all candidates. A person came up who was very, very upset that he said, this isn't funny, this isn't a game, this isn't a joke. Aaron Gunn, is going to be horrible. It's going to be a disaster for women. It's going to be a disaster for minorities. It's not going to be safe for them. I'm speaking from a place of privilege. I'm a white man. It's not going to be safe for women and LGBT people with Aaron Gunn. While he was saying this, he was standing right here in my face and not letting me move and not letting me speak and blocking me from getting to my car. So he's got really strong feelings about safety, and he doesn't see in himself that he is putting a woman in a situation where he's exerting his physical presence and preventing me from leaving. And Carol was there and had to step over, and Mark had to step over. But he didn't see in himself what he was calling out in another person. And we have to be careful not to do that. We have to be careful not to become what we don't want in our efforts to stop it. The next night, I was walking my dogs in Comox, and it was a beautiful, beautiful night. And the sunset was gorgeous. And I was walking my dogs. The sky was golden and pink. And somebody came out of their house and just took a picture of the sunset. That was all they came out to do. And walked back in their house that had a conservative lawn sign on it. Lawn. Mm-hmm. We're not that different. We all appreciate the beauty of this place. We all want a safe place to live where we can appreciate that beauty, where we can take a moment out of our night and go outside and take a picture of the sunset. But they're letting us feel like we are all fighting each other, and we're not. There's something bigger that we're all fighting, but they want us to waste our time fighting each other so that that bigger thing can happen while we're all distracted, hating and being afraid and thinking about other people as others. And we're all basically the same. We're all struggling to live. We all want the best for our families. So whatever happens on Monday, and it's probably not going to be good in this riding, that result is not going to be what any of us on this call want. It's not the end. Embrace it and let it fire you and use it to fight back against that bigger thing that is keeping us separate, that is trying to make us weaker by putting us all in our own little bubbles. Don't let that happen. That's the thing we have to be worried about. Aaron Gunn is nothing. He's not going to be relevant. He will make noise. He will be obnoxious. He's not the problem we can't deal with. And when he does things that harm people in our communities, stand up with them. Be there for them. If you're in a place of privilege, protect them. No matter what they are or who they are. We fight back by not letting them destroy our communities. This vote will be what it is, but don't let it change who you are. And that's what I would say.
That's what you would say. That is a wonderful message, Jessica. And before we close, I'll just tack on to that one of the good pieces of news that I've experienced, and I think Mark has experienced in this election with Jessica, is that things have changed since 2019 when Mark was running to now. there is a very strong voice that we've experienced in many settings and in many all candidates meetings where the candidates themselves are asking for one another and everyone to stop polarization, to stop othering people. And the people in the audience are saying the exact same thing, and they are applauding when the candidates are acting from that place in themselves. And so, as Jessica's saying, we're the ones who make the changes because we stop thinking and speaking and acting in defense or in attack. And that's the way we create community. So thank you, everybody, for your excellent questions, for being part of this call, for being interested in the Green Party, to be here tonight at this tail end of a campaign trail. And I've noticed in the chat, Larry has put how you can contact Jessica and how you can get in touch with the North Island Powell River Riding, our executive, and how you can connect with us and participate. So we would love to hear from you. We'd love to have you join the team as we move forward. So thanks again, everyone. We look forward to seeing you on the trail. And Jessica, thanks again so much.
Thanks, everyone. And and let us know in the chat if you came here because you saw an ad in the newspaper.
Yes, if you wouldn't mind doing that before you go, that would be fantastic.
Or what town you're in, because we're curious about
right.
how to reach people.
We'll hold it open so you can add in the chat how you heard about this.
Carol, maybe Larry could tell people that he's unmuted.
Yes, everyone.
Or we can.
Yeah, let's do that by unmuting yourself and just speaking where you heard about this town hall. Was it through the newspaper? Because we put it out in quite a few newspapers. We put it out through our database through GVote.
An email.
Through an email, thank you.
Yeah.
And was
I
that
live in East Courtney?
All right, thank you. Thanks very much. All right.
I heard from email.
Fred,
Thanks, Fred.
you heard from email. Thank you. Thank you. More to come. Anybody else?
Did anybody hear from you read it in the newspaper? John or Karen or Marnie? Susan.
That's good.
Well, if you think of other ways that are good to reach you, let us know.
Terrific. All right, everyone.
Good night.
Thanks again. Good
Bye.
night. Good night.
Thanks, Jessica.
Night. All the best.
Bye. Good night, guys.
Good night, Jan.
Well done, Jessica.
Excellent.
And Carol. Beautiful.
And Carol.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The perfect moderator, Carol.
Yeah.
Thank
It
you.
was nice.
It was lovely. Thank you.
Carol, does the recording